Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports. Breaking news in the NBA today. Unfortunately, I was at work when the trade went down, but I actually highlighted it in today's video earlier when I discussed the likelihood that Pascal Siakam was going to get traded to the Indiana Pacers. I also discussed other potential trade deadline predictions in that video, so make sure to go check that one out after this video. But let's get into it here now with my Pacers and Raptors trade grades from the Pascal Siakam trade. Now, if you guys do enjoy the content, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more. I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's get into it with the actual trade for those of you who have not seen it. Breaking, this is from Adrian Wojnarowski. The Indiana Pacers are finalizing a trade to acquire all-star forward Pascal Siakam in a deal that will send Bruce Brown, Jordan Nwora, and 3 first-round picks to the Toronto Raptors. New Orleans is a third team in the deal. The Pelicans get involved by sending Kira Lewis Jr. to the Toronto Raptors. And it's funny, in my trade deadline predictions video, my prediction for the New Orleans Pelicans was salary dumping Kira Lewis Jr. to get below the tax. We're going to touch on that right now really quickly. I think that's a huge home run for the Pelicans. Only cost them a second-round pick to do so. They get below the tax. There's a lot of financial benefits from doing so. Kira Lewis was not a key part of their team. Obviously, a missed draft pick from his draft a few years ago. Just hasn't really worked out in the NBA, unfortunately, for New Orleans and for himself. But the Pelicans get under the tax. Good move for them. And also, in the bottom right corner, you see Woj also shared the 2 first-round picks this year that Indiana had are going to Toronto, and the 2026 first top 4 protected is also going to the Toronto Raptors. So that is the deal. Now let's get into our actual trade grades, and with Toronto, I want to start on them because there's been so many discussions about what a Pascal Siakam trade would look like and who would he get traded to and what would the return be. Well, this is the cost of waiting. They should have traded him a year ago. If you remember back to last year's trade deadline live streams, I discussed the Raptors possibly trading OG Anunoby, Fred VanVleet at the time, and Pascal Siakam. The team did not do that. The team and Masai Ujiri was very patient, and in fact, they made a buy move for Jakob Poeltl, and they're now paying the kind of cost of that, and they're kind of paying the consequences a year later by now trading OG Anunoby, not getting any first-round picks in that deal, although I do like Emmanuel Quickley a lot. I think RJ Barrett was an interesting grab for Toronto as well. And then also now trading Pascal Siakam for what I would say is about pennies on the dollar. You're trading an all-NBA, all-star caliber player, and Raptors fans, listen to me. For the last month or so, you've been telling me how good he is. Like, I didn't know that. I'm aware of how good he was, but I tried telling you the return is going to be diminished. Everyone was telling me in the comment section saying, oh, well, we're going to do this, and we're going to get Benedict Mathurin or Jalen Johnson, or we're going to get Keegan Murray. Newsflash, you didn't get any of those guys. And the reason for that is because, well, he was an expiring contract, and there was a pretty big flight risk for a team trading for him. A lot of people also tried telling me Masai Ujiri has no interest in picks. He got 3 of them in this deal. So I think you have to reevaluate what your own franchise is doing a little bit. But let's get to the actual pieces that they got now. Those 3 first-round picks likely are all going to be in the 20s. 2 of them this year. One of them is a very bad swap pick, which will be likely anywhere from 25 to 30, depending on where the Oklahoma City Thunder finish this season. And then the other one is going to be from the Indiana Pacers, who are already a very good team. They're currently top 4 in the Eastern Conference, and now they added an All-NBA forward to a pretty big positional need. He improves their defense, I would say slightly, improves their offense pretty dramatically around Tyrese Haliburton when it comes to getting to the rim and finishing. They have a lot of spacing and guys who can shoot the basketball around Siakam, specifically Miles Turner in that front court pairing. I think this is a pretty good natural fit between Turner and Siakam, and because of that, I think that pick that the Raptors are going to have is going to be relatively low from the Pacers as well. You're looking at something, again, in the 20s, and then that 2026 first, maybe there's some upside there, but here's a newsflash. Tyrese Haliburton's younger than I am. They're going to be pretty good unless something, knock on wood, happens to Haliburton or one of their top players in 2026. I mean, the Pacers are going to be good. So you're getting 3 diminished first-round picks back. Now, it's possible that the Raptors could look to trade those in other deals, and I don't want to rule that out. The Raptors also owing their first-round pick this year to the San Antonio Spurs after trading Siakam, it's more likely we see them closer to the top of the draft, which means perhaps with that top 6 protection that they're able to keep that pick. So that's an important thing to remember when we discuss this deal as a whole, is the Raptors might be internally motivated to be bad this season and maybe get a top draft pick from their own selection. That's an important part of this trade for sure. Then when it comes to the actual players in the deal, outside of just the draft picks, Bruce Brown is a perfect retrade candidate, and that's going to impact what my trade grade ends up looking like ultimately, because I would be surprised. Bruce Brown with a very good contract, he's got a team option for next season, $23 million. This is a tradable player that a bunch of contenders are going to have interest in, especially given his role on the Denver Nuggets last year when they won the NBA Finals. Due to that, Bruce Brown is going to be a highly coveted player. Now, a couple of trade rules come into play. They can't aggregate other salary with him. So if you're going to look at Bruce Brown trades, which we're going to do in a future video, Bruce Brown has to be traded by himself. You can't attach other salaries to him now if you're Toronto based on NBA trade rules. So that's an important thing to remember. In this deal, you also get Jordan Nwora, who is a marksman three-point shooter. I actually think he should have a role playing on this Raptors team immediately. I think that his floor spacing could be of benefit to them. Now, I'm not suggesting he plays 25-30 minutes, but I'm saying he can probably play 10-15 minutes a night, given the fact that the Raptors are rebuilding, looking to retool around Scotty Barnes, put a shooter on the floor, and helps maximize some of your other talent. And I think Nwora could be a nice piece for that reason. Kira Lewis Jr. is in here. This is like a second draft project. Former lottery pick, just hasn't worked out. You get a second chance on him, maybe a change of scenery completely changes his career. I'm hoping for the best for him myself, but I don't really put a lot of weight or stock into this component of the trade for Toronto. So if I had to give them my actual trade grade, right now I would give them a B- or an incomplete. The reason for an incomplete is a Bruce Brown trade might completely change the outlook of this deal. Maybe they're able to trade Bruce Brown to a team that's very hungry, very title contendery right now, that wants to win a championship, and if they're able to extract maximum value for Bruce Brown, maybe that means a first round pick and some other young player and salary, that completely makes this deal look a lot better, because then the Raptors are walking away with 4 first round picks instead of 3. They're also then getting a young player in that actually maybe will have a real role on the team. Right now, looking at the players they got in this deal, they don't have anyone that will likely play actual minutes for them outside of maybe Jordan Nwora in the role that I already described. So because of that, I'm a little bit lower on this trade for Toronto, and a B- as I actually think kind of generous for them. I would, given how good Siakam is, and Raptors fans, again, this is what you've been telling me, and this is what I've already been knowing for a long time, Pascal Siakam is really freaking good at basketball. So the fact that you traded an All-NBA or All-Star caliber player for picks in the 20s and no real rotation players back, assuming you retrade Bruce Brown, that's a problem. Okay, that's why you get a B- grade. That's why I'm being, I think, generous, because honestly, if we're looking at long-term impact, it's very likely that none of those picks and none of the players you got back here have as much significance as Pascal Siakam. So with that in mind, I would say, honestly, I'm being a little generous here. B-, the reason I'm giving them a B- is I think, given all of the extenuating circumstances, the fact that they didn't trade him last year, the fact that they're trading him now as a rental, potentially, there is some flight risk involved with this. I think that they did about as good as they could. Now, again, it hurts not getting good players back. It hurts not getting guys who you view as long-term pieces of your organization back. But they did get draft compensation, 3 first-round picks, which is, again, a decent haul given their circumstances. So I want to be generous here, giving them that B- grade, although I think that had they traded him a year ago, they likely get double the value in return. Then let's turn our eyes to Indiana, and this is the new look dynamic duo with the Pacers. Pascal Siakam and Tyrese Halliburton are about to light the world on fire, and there's a few things that I think really make this a great pairing with the Indiana Pacers. One thing I want to highlight here, Pascal Siakam, I think there's going to be maximum utilization of his offensive skill set in Indiana. He's one of the best drivers of the basketball in the NBA. He's got probably the most potent spin move in the NBA. The only guy who I think has a real argument in that department against Siakam is a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo. So giving the Pacers another offensive scorer, someone who also can create offense for others, averaging about 5 assists per game this year, having a career year passing the basketball. He's had some awesome moments as a Toronto Raptor, was pivotal in their 2019 championship run, of course, won Most Improved Player, and also has just been a player who has ascended into a true star in the league. And I think with that, Indiana can now look at themselves and say it's not Halliburton plus role players, it's Halliburton plus Siakam plus role players. They didn't have to give up too much of their existing rotation. They were able to keep Obi Toppin and Jalen Smith in this deal, which I do think is a huge win for them, keeping some of their front court depth if there's an injury, or if a certain guy like Isaiah Jackson maybe isn't playing well in a certain matchup, they have optionality now. Maybe they could go Isaiah Jackson for 20 minutes in a game as a backup center, or maybe Jalen Smith, depending on what Rick Carlisle's seeing and what he wants to go to. I also think having Obi Toppin as your backup power forward behind Pascal Siakam gives you still good bench scoring. I think that's the one thing Obi Toppin, from a per-minute basis, his ability to score the basketball, play off the catch, be a rim threat as a lob presence, all of those things are essential. And I also think that Siakam's going to be benefited by playing with a passer like Tyrese Halliburton. Now, for his career, he's not the best catch and shoot three-point shooter. This year specifically, he's struggling a little bit more so than normal, even in that department. But I still think he's a player that, given his name, teams are not going to just be content with leaving him open. And he also just does such a good job of attacking closeouts, even soft closeouts. He's able to take the space that the defense is giving, find areas to attack in. And again, that spin move is so devastating that it gives Indiana just one more threat. And I talked about this a lot back earlier in the season when the Pacers were playing in the in-season tournament, especially their championship game against the Lakers. The Lakers were forming a high wall, blitzing Halliburton on every single pick and roll. And from there, it just felt like the Pacers were kind of thin on choices on how to score out of that. How do they score in 4 and 3 opportunities? Because even though it sounds like it should be easy, it just hasn't been for this Pacers team, because I think they were a creator short in their offense. Oftentimes, Miles Turner or Buddy Hield or player XYZ on the roster would have to make another play. And teams were willing to live with that. With Siakam now, maybe they could use him as a short roll screener, where if teams are going to try to blitz Halliburton and get the ball out of his hands, if you have Siakam and Halliburton running a two-man game, you're able to get Siakam the ball right around the top of the key or the nail. And from there, he's going to be very, very good at operating out of 4 and 3 circumstances. And I think playing in Indiana is going to be really refreshing for Siakam because of the pace and space of this offense. Rick Carlisle was obviously a really good coach offensively for the Dallas Mavericks throughout his coaching career with them when they won a title with Dirk Nowitzki, and obviously with how he was coaching Luka Doncic. And I think he's even found a new level with the Indiana Pacers, who have the league's best offense. And the reason is because they play with a ton of spacing, a ton of screen and rescreen action. And out of that, I think that they're very opportunistic in creating advantages. And even with lesser talented players with the ball in their hand, they're still finding a ton of success. Now, if that's Siakam making decisions out of 4 and 3 opportunities, 3 on 2 opportunities, playing in transition, which is something he's always been super good at, I think the Pacers are going to be a real threat in the Eastern Conference, not only in the first round series or second round series, but even a conference finals team that, honestly, if they're rolling with the way that they play offense, we've already seen them in the in-season tournament rise to the occasion, knock out the Boston Celtics, knock out the Milwaukee Bucks. This Indiana Pacers team is legit, and I am a big believer in them. Because of that, I'm going to give this trade grade an A-. And that's a very good trade grade. I know some Pacers fans are going to say, whoa, you just hyped them up for like 2-3 straight minutes. How is it only an A-? There's the flight risk component here. Theoretically, again, I'm not expecting this to happen. My current assumption is Pascal Siakam will sign an extension in the offseason, or at least re-sign after testing free agency with the Indiana Pacers. But the one concern here is, if he takes meetings with other teams, he's liable to leave in free agency. And that is always a concern anytime you're talking about free agency. Now, I think Siakam's a loyal player. They have his bird rights. They're going to be able to pay him more than other teams. All of those components are very important. So again, I'm not super concerned about it, but that's the difference for me in a trade grade of an A and an A+. Like, given the amount of stuff that they had to give up, I think it's an A+ for them. I don't think it completely solves some of their issues. I still think, like, if Siakam was a little bit of a better shooter and maybe more of a defensive identity defining player, that would probably bump the trade up to me for an A or an A+, and if his contract was a little bit longer. But it's not. But given their whole circumstances, they did very, very well in this. They didn't give up any core pieces. They didn't give up Benedict Mathurin or Jarris Walker, just like the entire time I suggested that they shouldn't do that and that I would never do that myself. Obviously, Raptors fans disagreed with me, but throughout this process, I've been much lower on Siakam's value than what most of the other people around the NBA world seemingly have been. And I think really with what the deal ended up being, I think I was pretty darn accurate in my evaluation of what his trade value was going to look like. And with that, I think the Pacers did, again, very, very well, all things considered. So when it comes to my concluding thoughts, first of all, I'm kind of wondering, are the Pacers actual contenders? because they really might be. They are a great team. They're really well set up. Again, Rick Carlisle is doing a great job on the offensive end. I think Siakam is now one of their better defenders as well. And I think his ability to play out of advantage situations is going to be huge for elevating this Pacers team, especially come playoff time when teams are trying to blitz Halliburton, get the ball out of his hands. I think this gives them just another offensive weapon. And it kind of sounds crazy for the top offense in the league to sound like they need another offensive upgrade. I actually really think they did, and they got that here. And then for the Raptors, again, I'm being slightly generous with that B- or incomplete grade, because in today's context, this is the best that they could do realistically. But had they done this trade a year ago, had they made a Pascal Siakam trade a year ago, they probably double the value. They're probably getting last year's Pacers pick, which is again what turned into Jarris Walker, who was completely untouchable in these trade discussions. They maybe even get Benedict Mathurin, because teams would look at it and say there's a year and a half left on Siakam's contract instead of just a couple of months. And that's a big difference when we're talking about some of these trades. And honestly, if I had to give an overall management grade for the Toronto Raptors in the last 12 months, and how would I grade Masai Ujiri, it's a D-. And the only thing keeping him from an F is at least there was a protection on that pick they traded for Jakob Poeltl, because boy, is this a problem. They traded a 2024 first, top 6 protected with a bunch of backup protections through, I believe, 2026 or 2027. Pretty sure it's 26, but I'd have to double check that. They just haven't made smart decisions. They should have sold last year. They bought instead. Now they're kind of facing the consequences of those decisions. So honestly, kind of a tough beat here if you are the Toronto Raptors. I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more content. Really appreciate you guys. Go give us follows on the socials, on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. Go join the Discord, links in the description below. There's a lot of great basketball content. Let me know down in the comment section below what your trade grades are, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.